Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The Fallen Sentinel. Mira awoke to the taste of ash in her mouth and the sharp tang of ozone in her nostrils. The ash desert of Ankara stretched around her like an ocean of shattered rust, rolling dunes of pulverized stone, whipped into waves by the hot wind. Her limbs felt leaden, her breath shallow. She tried to rise, but a wave of dizziness sent her back to the cracked earth. Pain bloomed across her ribs. Memories of the ambush came flooding back, the sudden blast of energy, the agonized roar of her sisters, the way the sky had fallen with fire. She had fled, but the world had caught up with her. Above, the red sun dipped behind an onyx peninsula, painting the sky in bruised hues. Mira blinked against the dying light. The desert was quiet except for the whisper of dust devils twisting across the horizon. She closed her eyes, expecting the final shadow of a hunter's cloak. She had been taught to face death with honor, but not like this, stranded and alone. A distant rumble echoed across the sands. At first she thought it thunder, but Ankara's sky was always still. The rumble grew louder, more deliberate, until it resolved into the mechanical whine of hovercraft engines. Panic clenched her heart. She clawed at the ground, desperate to vanish beneath the dunes. The engines halted, and a single beam of light swept the desert like a spear. Mira flattened herself against the earth, bracing for the moment the beam would find her and the carnage would begin. Instead, the light passed overhead. She heard voices, soft, clipped, alien in their accent. A footstep of heavy boots. Mira lay perfectly still, every nerve straining. She dared not breathe until the voice called out. "Search grid Delta 4, move west 3 clicks." The beam flicked again. The voice repeated the coordinates, fading as the hovercraft lifted off. Mira exhaled in a stifled hiss. The world had not ended yet. She tried to roll onto her back to see the sky, but a spear of pain stabbed her side. She gasped, pressing a trembling hand to her ribs. Blood seeped between her fingers. She closed her eyes against the tears. 2 hours later. The sun had vanished completely. The desert's chill was sudden, sharp. A second beam of light hovered above her. This time Mira could hear the hum of servos and the hiss of hydraulics. The ground vibrated. Then boots, 2 pairs, thudded against rock. She tensed, steeling herself. "I see movement," one voice said. "Hold your position." The beam swept left to right, then paused on her shoulder, glinting like cold steel. A hand grabbed the collar of her torn tunic and yanked her to her knees. She gasped, pain lancing through her broken ribs. "Do not resist," the voice commanded. It was rougher, older. They had clipped her wings. Mira could not flee even if she dared. She lifted her head, meeting the beam's glare with defiance. They could kill her, but they would not see her fear. Then the beam snapped off. The figure behind her got to his knees, peering into her pale face. Torches flared from the hovercraft's side, casting the world in flickering orange. Mira's eyes adjusted. The human's face was ashen under the oil-smudged helmet, his uniform was stained with dust and scorch marks. He might have been a hunter, but his gaze held something else, curiosity, hesitation. "Identify yourself," he said, voice low. Mira opened her mouth, but pain tangled her words. She only pressed her hand harder to her side. The human's jaw clenched. After a breath, he knelt and rummaged in a pouch strapped to his thigh. He produced a triangular device that chirped when he touched it to her skin. A blue light pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "She's alive," he murmured. Then louder, "Signal Corporal," the radio crackled. "Report," a distant voice answered. "I have a live specimen," the soldier said. "Wounded, but breathing. Coordinates 19er3x52. Sending extraction pack." The sand beneath Mira's knees shifted as the soldier stood. "Stay still," he said, glancing at the sky. "We get you to camp, patch you up." Mira stared at him, incredulous. She had expected hunger or hatred. Not mercy. He slapped a wristband around her bound hands, and automated restraints slid shut. The device itself glowed with soft violet lines. She tried to wrench her wrists free, but it was stronger than 10 of her sentinel sisters combined. The soldier gestured to the hovercraft. "Move," his tone was gentle now, as though coaxing a frightened animal. Mira hesitated, but there was nowhere else to go. She crawled to her feet and let him guide her to the hovercraft's ramp. Inside, the hole was cramped and hot. Sensors blinked across every surface. The human strapped her to a reclining stretcher, secure but not cruel. He knelt beside her, producing a small booklet. "I need basic vitals," he said. "Name, rank, origin." His voice sounded bored, but his eyes watched her intently. Mira's tongue felt swollen. She croaked, "Mira, Sentinel." He scribbled on a data pad. "Affiliation. Ankara Defense." Her voice cracked. She paused, then added in the common tongue, "I am alone." His breath caught. He closed the booklet. "You're safe," he said softly. "We'll get you help." Then he pressed a button and the stretcher slid away, lifting her toward the ceiling as the hatch sealed behind him. The hovercraft shuddered. Mira gripped the stretcher's straps, heart hammering. She watched the desert floor fall away in darkness, the wind-whipped ash replaced by cold steel walls. The human climbed in after her, securing a harness above his boots. They rode in silence, the only sound the hum of engines and the hiss of life support vents. When at last the craft touched down, torches lit a sprawling encampment carved from the desert's heart. Tents formed a crude village of dunes and dust. Human soldiers milled about, stacking crates and tending glowing reactors. A low wall of scrap metal marked the camp's boundary. Mira's captor helped her down and guided her toward a cluster of tents marked by a red cross on a white field. "Medbay," he said. "You'll be out of torment soon." He paused at the doorway. "I'm Yarek." Mira's lips trembled as she whispered, "Mira." Yarek nodded. "Welcome to Hope's Edge." He slipped away, leaving her on the threshold. Inside, machines blinked in soft blue light. Beds lined the walls, each cradling a wounded soldier. A medic in a white coat glanced up, eyes widening at the sight of Mira's alien form. "Patient 37, she asked. Yarek reappeared, gently sliding Mira onto a biobed. Soft restraints clicked around her arms and legs, and sensors affixed to her temples. Mira closed her eyes, bracing for pain or worse. But the medic only offered a small smile and pressed a control panel. Warm fluid hissed into an intravenous line. Mira drifted on the edge of consciousness as the medic applied soothing bombs and scanning probes. She felt a measure of calm. Somehow, she had fallen into human hands, and they had given her mercy instead of slaughter. As the desert wind howled outside and the candles of Hope's Edge flickered in the night, Mira realized that death had been postponed. For the first time in her life, she feared the unknown not because of the threat of violence, but because of the fragile promise of a second chance. The crimson campfire. Mira awoke to the distant glow of embers and the hush of tentative voices. The drip had long since stopped, and the crisp night air seeped through the medbay flap. Sabine, the camp's devoted medic, hovered at the threshold, her lantern casting a soft halo on the sand. "You're alert earlier than I expected," Sabine murmured, voice gentle. Mira sat up slowly, ribs protesting with every breath. Her senses spun, a faint scent of burning wood, the low murmur of soldiers, and something she had never known before, anticipation of mercy instead of slaughter. Yarek appeared at Mira's side, offering a canteen of water and a strip of coarse linen bandage. "We're moving you to the campfire," he said quietly. His tone carried neither triumph nor regret, only resolve. Mira took the water, surprised by its cool sweetness, and wrapped the linen carefully around her bruised ribs. Each movement ached, but she dared not show weakness. She followed Yarek out of the medbay tent, past rows of makeshift beds and flickering lanterns, into the open where a great circle of stones held the glow of a crimson campfire. The campfire blazed low, flames licking the night sky in muted hues of orange and red. Soldiers gathered around, their faces creased with exhaustion and wary curiosity. At the fire's edge stood Rovan, a grizzled veteran whose jaw jutted like a broken rock. His faded uniform bore the scars of countless battles, and his dark eyes narrowed as Mira approached. The crowd fell silent, the crackle of burning wood the only sound. Mira felt every pair of eyes on her pale skin and wingless shoulders, expecting malice. She braced herself for a final reckoning. Yarek settled Mira on a low rock and knelt beside her, shading her from Rovan's harsh glare. Sabine joined them, kneeling to examine Mira's bandages in the campfire light. "Your wounds are healing well," Sabine said, her voice steady. "But you need to eat soon. Come." She held out a bowl of thin stew and a chunk of hard bread. Mira stared, astonished. She had seen humans feast cruelly on strangers. This offering felt like an impossible kindness. Her fingers trembled as she accepted the bowl, lifting it to her lips. The stew was warm, spiced with unfamiliar herbs that stung her throat with comfort. Mira closed her eyes against the flavor, earthy, smoky, nourishing. She chewed slowly, fear and gratitude warring in her chest. Around the fire, soldiers shifted uneasily. Some watched with suspicion, others bowed their heads in respect for a life spared. Rovin's arms were crossed, jaw tight, but even he did not move to stop her feeding. Mira realized how fragile her survival had become, rooted in human compassion. When Mira had finished, Sabine gently wiped stray crumbs from her chin. "You may stay here tonight," Sabine said, voice soft. "Tomorrow we decide what comes next." Mira met Sabine's eyes, warm, empathetic pools that offered no promise of doom. She nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Sabine stood and addressed the circle. "This one is our guest. She will not be harmed under my watch." A murmur rippled through the soldiers, as though a spell had been broken. Rovin stepped forward, shading his eyes from the firelight. "Guest or not," he growled, "she's still alien scum. We've lost more men to her kind than to any weapon." His words fell like stones. Some soldiers stiffened, ready to support him. Yarrick rose, placing a firm hand on Rovin's shoulder. "Enough," Yarrick said, voice low but firm. "We're here to protect, not to judge. We won't become the monsters we fight." Rovin's eyes flashed, but he stayed his tongue under Yarrick's unwavering gaze. Silence returned, broken only by the snap of firewood. Mira watched the exchange with wide eyes, heart pounding. She dared to swallow hope. Yarrick turned back to her. "You can rest," he offered. "We'll watch over you." He reached into a satchel and withdrew a soft woolen cloak. Mira hesitated, then slid into the warmth. The weight of the fabric against her shoulders felt like a promise that she might live again. Sabine knelt beside the fire, picking up a rusted canteen. She poured fragrant liquid into small cups, offering one to Mira. "This is tea," Sabine explained. "It helps with sleep and healing." Mira accepted, holding the cup with both hands. The liquid was light, soothing, and bitter. As she sipped, her muscles loosened, and her mind drifted on the edge of dreams. Around her, soldiers relaxed, sharing stories in low tones, finding laughter after too many battles. Rovin sat back down, muttering under his breath, but he did not disrupt the fragile peace. Instead, he lit a cigarette, the ember glowing violet in the firelight. His gaze flicked to Mira and then away, as though torn between old fears and a grudging sense of decency. Mira studied his profile, saw the deep lines of regret etched in his face. She realized that not all monsters wore claws. Yarrick crouched beside the fire, warming his hands. He glanced at Mira and spoke softly so only she could hear. "You've done more than survive," he said. "Your presence here could change everything." Mira met his gaze, confusion and doubt warring in her expression. "I'm no hero," she whispered. "I'm a broken sentinel." Yarrick's eyes were gentle. "Sometimes a second chance creates a hero," he said. As the night deepened, Sabine drew quill and parchment from her satchel. She dipped the quill in ink and sketched quick symbols by the fire's glow. Mira peered over her shoulder. Sabine smiled. "I'm recording your vitals, your story," she said. "We need to know who you are." Mira hesitated, then nodded. Sabine's compassion felt real, and Mira sensed that trust might grow if she shared her truth. When Mira began to speak, her voice wavered like a new breeze stirring the desert. She told of Ankara's falling skies, of sentinel sisters who died in the ash, of betrayal by her own people. Her words hung in the firelit air, raw and honest. Sabine transcribed every syllable, her quill dancing across the parchment. Yarrick and Rovin listened in silence, the fire reflecting in their eyes. In that moment, the campfire's flames felt less like a beacon for hunters and more like a symbol of fragile unity. By the time Mira fell silent, the embers glowed faintly and the soldiers began to drift to their tents. Sabine rolled up the parchment carefully. "Thank you," she said. "We'll keep your story safe." Mira wrapped the woolen cloak more tightly around herself, exhaustion weighing her eyelids. Yarrick offered his shoulder as a pillow. She leaned against him, a stranger in a foreign world, and closed her eyes. The circle of soldiers dispersed, leaving only Yarrick, Sabine, Rovin, and Mira. Rovan reached into his pocket and tossed a small ration bar onto the sand beside her. Without a word, he turned and walked away. Mira watched him go, the last ember of hostility flickering in his retreating form. She realized that even hardened hearts could soften. As Yarrick and Sabine guided her back toward the medbay tent, Mira glanced once more at the dying campfire. She had come expecting pain and feast, but found warmth and understanding. The crimson glow had become a cradle for mercy rather than a stage for brutality. And under the vast desert sky, for the first time since her world burned, Mira dared to hope that a second chance might be enough to reshape her destiny. Echoes of trust. The following morning dawned pale and windless over Hope's Edge. Mira woke to the distant clatter of metal and hurried footsteps. Outside her medbay tent, the camp was stirring earlier than usual. Through the thin canvas walls she heard raised voices, sharp, urgent, unfamiliar. Yarrick appeared at her side, concern creasing his brow. "Ilias is on his way," he said quietly. "The commander demands your transfer," Mira's heart thudded. She had hoped to heal here in peace, but the specter of violence had returned. Yarrick helped her from the biobed and guided her toward the command tent, where Ilias awaited. The path wound between rows of supply crates and half-finished fortifications. Altair, a wiry young engineer, crossed their path carrying a toolbox. His eyes flicked to Mira, then away. Yarrick nodded to him. Altair hesitated, then offered a curt nod in return. Mira sensed his conflict, his posture spoke of duty torn by conscience. At the command tent's entrance, Rovan and Sabine stood guard. Sabine's gaze was steady, Rovan's was grim. Yarrick took a breath and laid a hand on Mira's shoulder. "I won't let him harm you," he vowed. Mira squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Together, they entered. Inside, Ilias sat behind a kerosene lamp that cast harsh shadows across his face. His uniform was immaculate, his posture rigid. His eyes, cold and calculating, tracked Mira the moment she stepped inside. Behind him, a map of Ankara's war zones was pinned to the wall, marked with red X's where Sentinel forces had fallen. "Welcome," Ilias said, voice measured. "You've been nursed back to health at great expense," he tapped a finger against the map. "I cannot allow you to remain in hiding. Your unique physiology makes you ideal for study. Hand her over, Yarrick, and I will ensure her survival under proper containment," his gaze flicked to Mira. "Or refuse, and I will take her by force." Mira's pulse quickened. She straightened, drawing a sharp breath. "You will not experiment on me," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I am not a specimen," Ilias's lips curved into a thin smile. "Your defiance is admirable but misguided. Science advances only through sacrifice," he gestured to Rovan. "Escort her to the holding pens." Rovan stepped forward, but Sabine's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, I must protest." She strode into the tent, robes fluttering. "Mira is a living being with rights. She saved lives here," Ilias's eyes snapped to Sabine. "You dare interfere," he hissed. "You will be held accountable for insubordination." Yarrick stepped between them. "Ilias, listen," he pleaded. "She has shown nothing but loyalty and bravery. Turning her over will break the trust of everyone here." Ilias leaned back, folding his arms. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the lamp's sputter. Then he stood. "Yarrick, you disappoint me. But I will delay, until I see proof of her threat level." His gaze locked on Altair. "Engineer, run diagnostics on her. Report by sundown." Altair's jaw clenched. "Yes, Commander," he bowed stiffly. Once Ilias had strode from the tent, Sabine let out a relieved breath. Rovan exhaled, shoulders sagging. Mira sank onto a wooden crate. "Why do they fear me?" she whispered. Yarrick knelt beside her. "Fear of the unknown," he said. "But we'll face it, together." Over the next hours, Altair conducted a battery of tests in a side lab beneath the command tent. He attached sensors to Mira's wrists and temples, measured her metabolisms, scanned her bone density. Mira lay on a metal table, panic gnawing at her chest. Each probe felt like a violation, yet Altair handled her with surprising gentleness. Between tests, he offered her water and a nod of reassurance. Mira realized he did not share Ilias's contempt, he was torn between orders and empathy. Outside, Sabine and Yarrick rallied the soldiers. Whispers of rebellion hummed through the camp as more people sided with Mira. Rovan grumbled but refused to participate in any handover. Tension thickened the air like a gathering storm. Mira's fate would hinge on Altair's report. At dusk, Ilias returned with a pair of senior officers. Mira was brought before them, weary and bruised but resolute. Altair stepped forward, datapad in hand. "Commander," he said, voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "I find no anomalous aggression signature. Her vitals indicate trauma recovery, not latent hostility. Her physiology is compatible with our environments without severe modification." Ilias's eyes narrowed. "So you conclude she poses no danger?" Altair met his gaze. "Based on current data, yes. She saved lives here. Her neural patterns suggest empathy impulses, cooperation responses. She is no predator." A murmur of surprise rippled among the officers. For the first time, doubt creased Ilias's face. Mira stood taller. "I will not be your specimen," she said. "I served as sentinel to protect my world. Here I have learned compassion from humans. I seek only to live and repay your kindness." Ilias drummed his fingers. Minutes passed like hours. Then he exhaled. "So be it," he said finally. "Mira of Ankara, you may remain under Jarek's supervision. But know this, any sign of betrayal, and you will be locked away." Jubilation rose in Mira's chest. Jarek placed a hand on her arm. "We did it," he said. Sabine and Altair exchanged relieved smiles. Ilias gave a curt nod and departed, flanked by officers. The command tent emptied, leaving the three of them in soft lamplight. Outside, the camp buzzed with subdued celebration. Altair approached Mira and Jarek beneath the starlit sky. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I followed orders, but I believe in what you've shown us." Mira offered him a grateful smile. Sabine appeared, carrying 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Mira, then to Altair. "To trust," Sabine toasted softly. The three sipped the bitter brew, warmth spreading through them. In the days that followed, Mira joined Altair in the workshop, learning the engineer's craft. Together they repaired damaged hovercraft and reinforced barricades. Altair shared stories of his homeworld, a place where humans had once been strangers. Mira taught him sentinel combat drills adapted for human physiology. Through each shared task, their respect and trust deepened. Jarek watched from a distance, pride swelling in his chest. He saw Mira laugh with Altair at a joke about misaligned circuits. He saw Sabine gently tending to both humans and aliens alike. And he felt the first stirrings of something powerful, unity born from compassion, forged in adversity. Echoes of that trust rippled through the camp, binding hearts that fear had once torn apart. As the twin moons of Ankara rose above the desert, Mira stood beside the workshop doors, gaze fixed on the horizon. She no longer feared humans as predators. Instead, she felt the hope of a fragile alliance, one built on second chances and the courage to choose mercy over hatred. And in that quiet moment, she knew that whatever trials still lay ahead, she would face them not alone but with new allies by her side. Mira awoke before dawn, the red desert sky still hidden behind Hope's Edge's scrap metal walls. Sleep had offered no respite, visions of sentinel warriors in chains haunted her even in dreams. Jarek found her packing her harness and cloak beside the medbay. "They're moving Karan's laborers to the supply yard today," he whispered. "Ilias plans to sell them off to the highest bidder." Mira's heart constricted. She had hoped to prove herself worthy through healing and service, but now it was clear, only direct action could save the Forsaken. Together, they slipped through the narrow alley between tents toward the old comms hub where Selen waited. Selen's workstation glowed with pale console light. Her slender fingers flew across the keyboard, rerouting power and spoofing security protocols. Cables snaked along the walls, patched together with salvaged parts. "I've disabled biometric locks at the gates," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "If the alarm trips, I can loop camera feeds for 30 seconds." Mira scanned the flickering screens. "What about the drone turrets?" she asked. Selen tapped a sequence. "Their target IDs now match friendly patrols." "They won't fire on us," Mira exhaled. "We still need Karan to rally the workers." Selen nodded and summoned Karan via encrypted channel. Karan arrived under the shadow of a supply crane, pale blue skin glinting in the console glow. His dark eyes were rings of resolve. They're loading convoys at the eastern gate, he said. Once they leave, there's no turning back. Yarek laid out the plan. Mira and Karan would signal the laborers, Sabine and Altair would secure the medbay, and Selen would hold the defenses. We free the workers, seize the armory, then collapse the perimeter, Yarek said. Karan placed a steady hand on Mira's shoulder. I trust you, he whispered. Mira drew strength from his words. Dawn was moments away. As the first light crept over the dunes, laborers marched toward the eastern gate in shackles and chains. Ilias, immaculately uniformed, paraded before them with a swagger only cruelty could perfect. Sabine moved discreetly through their ranks, offering water and soft words. Altair lingered near the medbay, fingers twitching with suppressed tension. Rovan, perched atop a guard tower, scanned the line for any sign of trouble. Mira and Karan crouched near the bell tower, waiting for the moment to strike. Karan rang the bell once, sharp, authoritative. 2 more tolls answered back as laborers froze and heads lifted. Confusion rippled through the ranks. Mira seized the moment and fired a single flare into the sky. Across the camp, floodlights went dark, replaced by Selen's looped feed showing empty stands. A distant klaxon wailed, a false signal of an external breach. Soldiers abandoned their posts to investigate the phantom threat. Now, Mira shouted. She sprinted along the column of laborers, hands unclipping shackles. Karan followed, voice carrying above the alarm, to freedom, hands that once held pickaxes now seized broken shovels and bent metal rods. Sabine and Altair raced to the medbay, barricading entrances and distributing makeshift weapons. Yarek led a squad of sympathetic guards to the armory, using stolen keys to swing the blast doors open. Inside the armory, rows of hover rifles and energy grenades awaited. Mira's breath caught at the sight. She grabbed a hover rifle, feeling its balance and power. Karan handed out rifles to laborers, their trembling hands transforming fear into hope. Yarek and Sabine rallied the insurgents, teaching them basic drills. Altair jammed comms channels to prevent calls for reinforcements. Outside, shouts erupted as Ilias realized the camp was under siege. He stormed from the officer's tent, sidearm drawn, followed by a cohort of loyal troops. Stop them, he thundered. Stun rounds snapped through the dawn air, catching officers off guard. Laborers trained by Karan and Yarek returned fire with borrowed rifles, blue bolts arcing through the courtyard. Sabine knelt beside wounded soldiers, her healing touch knitting torn fabrics and easing agony. Altair rerouted power to flood the pathways with blinding white light, disorienting incoming reinforcements. Mira confronted Rovan as he raised his rifle against a group of liberated laborers. Her voice rang out. Rovan, you chose mercy once, choose it again. Rovan's finger hovered on the trigger. Memories of Karan's open hand and Sabine's protective shield flickered in his mind. With a strangled exhale, he lowered his rifle. The soldier on the tower crawled down, eyes wide with conflicting loyalties. Ilias's face twisted with fury as he approached Mira, boots crunching on crushed sandstone. You'll pay for this, he spat, raising his sidearm. Mira leveled her hover rifle, barrel trembling. Ilias, she said, voice steady, end this now or we end it for you. Laborers and soldiers alike trained their weapons on the commander. He hesitated, his perfect world of order and profit smashed by the very people he'd oppressed. Karan stepped forward, chains of command forgotten. We want no blood, he said. Release the workers, surrender the camp. Sabine knelt to free wounded officers from stun cuffs, offering first aid even as their weapons lay idle. Altair cut the power to the remaining gate motors. Yarek stood guard by Mira's side, rifle but ready. Around them, the camp's captive workforce raised makeshift banners, ragged cloaks tied to broken poles. Ilias's jaw clenched. The efficiency he had wielded like a blade evaporated in the face of unified defiance. With a reluctant nod, he dropped his sidearm onto the sand. The clatter echoed through the courtyard. Soldiers under his command lowered their weapons. The uprising had triumphed without a single lethal shot. Mira exhaled, relief washing through her like rain. Cries of triumph rose from the laborers as shackles were cast aside. The eastern gate creaked open under Altair's rewiring, revealing the endless desert beyond. Mira and Karan embraced as brothers in arms, the dawn light glinting off stolen rifles. Sabine gathered the wounded, both human and alien, under a makeshift banner that read Unity. Yarek and Selen plugged communications back in, broadcasting a declaration of freedom across Hope's Edge's comms network. In the calm that followed, Mira surveyed the scene. The camp's broken walls now served as the cradle of a new order. Laborers hauled away damaged barricades and offered blankets to exhausted soldiers. Altair began plans to reinforce defenses under a council of equals. Rovan joined Karan's group, tears in his eyes as he embraced the rescued workers. Only Ilias remained on the courtyard floor, staring at the rising sun, his empire of cruelty reduced to dust. Mira knelt beside him, offering her hand. "It doesn't have to end in blood," she said. Ilias looked up, weary and defeated. After a long moment, he took her hand. "I'll help you rebuild," he whispered. The promise felt as fragile as the desert breeze, but it was a start. Above them, the sky blazed red and gold, an omen of both destruction and hope. The uprising of the Forsaken had claimed Hope's Edge, but their journey was only halfway complete. As the first rays of sun touched the reclaimed walls, Mira and her allies stood together, sentinel and human, veteran and hacker, leader and medic, bound by blood and trust. They would need every ounce of courage to face the world beyond these gates, but in that dawnlit courtyard, they knew one truth: mercy had become their greatest weapon, forging unity from the ashes of betrayal. The first light of a true dawn crept over Hope's Edge, painting the scarred walls in soft gold and rose. In the courtyard, the bloodwood sapling stood taller now, its red leaves unfurling toward the sun. Mira knelt to brush fresh soil around its base, the scent of new growth mingling with desert dust. Around her, laborers and soldiers worked side by side to clear rubble, reinforce walls, and tend garden plots sprouting from salvaged seed pods. This was no mere outpost now, it was a living settlement built on trust. Yarrick appeared at her side, carrying 2 steaming cups of herbal tea. He handed one to Mira before lifting his own lips in a quiet smile. "Second dawn," he murmured, raising his cup. "We've earned it." Mira sipped the bitter brew, warmth spreading through her chest. "It feels like a dream," she replied. "Yet every brick we lay, every seed we plant, reminds me it's real." Behind them, Sabine organized the medbay's expansion, her healing lantern hung above rows of cots where both humans and Kairans recovered side by side. Altair emerged from the workshop, wiping sweat from his brow, a blueprint under his arm. "I've rerouted power lines," he announced. "We'll have stable lights and fresh water pumps within the week." His grin was boyish and proud. Selin slipped up behind him, adjusting a data link on his shoulder. "The comms are ready," she added. "Secure channels to the United Colony, and open lines for local traffic." Mira nodded, absorbing each detail. The camp's transformation had been swift but fragile, every piece had to fit. Beneath a makeshift pavilion of patched tarps, Karan convened the council of freed laborers and former guards. Their voices rose in debate over resource allocation, how much water to store, where to build schools, whether to permit quarrying the nearby rock ridge. Mira and Yarrick listened, offering guidance where their experience could help. Gradient by gradient, debate by debate, they shaped a vision of a community where alien and human lives held equal weight. As the council adjourned, a distant hum vibrated through the valley. Heads turned skyward to see a sleek transport descending behind the outer walls. Its hull gleamed silver blue, emblazoned with the emblem of the United Colony, a circle of interlocking hands. At its ramp stood Envoy Kalis, tall and composed, robes trailing like water, eyes like polished chrome. Flanked by aides and security droids, Kalis surveyed the settlement with inscrutable calm. Yarrick stepped forward to greet the envoy as Mira joined at his side. Karan, Sabine, Altair, Selin, and Rovan fell in behind them, forming a line of hosts who had overthrown tyranny and built something new. Mira offered her hand, and Kalis took it with a curt nod. "I am Envoy Kalis of the United Colony," the envoy said, voice resonant yet void of accent. "I come bearing both concern and counsel." Mira inclined her head. "We welcome you," she replied softly. "This is our home now, and we seek your guidance." Inside the pavilion, Kalis's aides arranged seating around a low table carved from driftwood. Vessels of nutrient broth and fruit slices were passed discreetly by Selin, who then took a seat beside Altair. Sabine stood at the envoy's side, prepared to offer healing if needed. The air crackled with anticipation as Kalis unrolled a scroll bearing official seals. "Reports reached US of uprising and bloodshed," the envoy began. "We wish to understand how Hope's Edge rose and whether it aligns with colonial directives." Yarrick cleared his throat. We reclaimed this camp from tyranny, he said, gaze steady. The commander sought to exploit alien labor for profit and experimentation. We freed the workers, established a council, and opened our doors to all who would build unity. Kalis's eyes flickered once, an imperceptible acknowledgement. Your methods were unorthodox, the envoy replied, yet effective. The colony's charter forbids profiteering from sentient lives. We commend your actions, though rebellion always bears risk. Mira rose and retrieved a ledger bound in canvas. I carry the names of every life lost here, she said, voice trembling. She opened the ledger to a page listing fallen guards and laborers alike. We laid down arms at the cost of trust, not blood, Mira continued. Those lost deserve remembrance, not vengeance. We built this settlement to honor them. She closed the ledger gently and set it before the envoy. Silence fell, broken only by the murmur of desert wind. Kalis studied the ledger, then met Mira's gaze. Your compassion is rare, the envoy said. The colony values life above all. We will recognize Hope's Edge as a sanctioned-free settlement. In exchange, you will join our trade network, share resources, and abide by the Charter's principles of mutual respect. Murmurs of approval rose from the assembled hosts. Mira felt tears prick her eyes. This was the validation they had risked everything to achieve. Altair stood to speak. We need infrastructure support, he said, voice clear. Water purifiers, renewable power arrays, educational platforms. Kalis nodded and signaled an aide, who produced pictographic data pads. We will dispatch engineers and supplies, the envoy confirmed. Your workshop will receive upgrades, your medbay advanced protocols, and your council liaison will join quarterly summits. In return, Hope's Edge will send emissaries to our capital for cultural exchange. Selin tapped her data link, showing live maps of local sensor grids and weather patterns. We can integrate your satellites to predict sandstorms, she suggested. Kalis's expression softened at the collaboration. Excellent, the envoy responded. Your technological ingenuity will be an asset to the colony. Sabine then rose, offering a medical proposal. We request access to colonial vaccines for endemic viruses and training programs for field medics. Kalis approved with a silent nod. Rovan approached last, head bowed. I fought against Mira's people, he confessed, voice thick. I failed when mercy was needed. I vow to serve this council as protector, not oppressor. Mira laid a hand on Rovan's shoulder. You fought your own fears, she replied. We all make mistakes. Today, you stand with us. Kalis extended a palm to Rovan. And today, we welcome you as an ally. Rovan's lips trembled into a grateful smile. With terms agreed, Kalis closed the meeting and offered a ceremonial vessel filled with desert water and Quarren spice. May this union flow ever onward, the envoy intoned. Mira took the vessel and poured its contents onto the ground beside the bloodwood tree. Yarrick and Karan followed, each pouring a drop. The tree's leaves shimmered in response, as though blessing the pact. Council members formed a circle, hands joined around the sapling. Outside, the settlement erupted in celebration. Children, human, Quarren, and those of mixed heritage, danced around the tree, laughter echoing against the desert walls. Laborers and soldiers shared bread and stew at long tables, toasting to tomorrow's promise. Sabine led a healing chant beneath fluttering lanterns. Altair announced a demonstration of solar panels glowing in the dusk. Selin broadcast the festivities on colony networks, bringing Hope's Edge into every home beyond the desert. Amid the revelry, Mira and Yarrick stood apart for a moment, gazing at the flourishing settlement. We dreamed of a second chance, Mira whispered. And we've built it, Yarrick wrapped an arm around her. This dawn belongs to all of us, he said. But it was your courage that lit the way, Mira leaned into him, eyes shining. And your trust that carried me through. That night, Envoy Kalis departed in the silver-blue transport, leaving behind the promise of support and friendship. As the engines hummed skyward, the hosts watched until the craft became a star in the velvety sky. Sabine closed the pavilion flaps, Altair secured comms, and Selin deactivated the last security loops. To the east, the twin moons of Ankara rose, their pale glow mingling with the colony's beacon light. Hope's Edge settled into quiet under the new watch. The council would convene at first light to draft a charter. Children would attend school in a refurbished tent where Quarren and human teachers taught side by side. Fields of hydroponic gardens would soon bear fruit. Guard towers would stand unmanned until needed, replaced by community watch posts. The bloodwood sapling by morning would be taller still, its roots reaching deep into the reclaimed earth. In that second dawn, Mira traced her fingers along the sapling's trunk. She felt the pulse of life and promise beneath its bark. Around her, the settlement breathed in unison, a living testament to mercy's power, to alliances forged in rebellion and hope. And as the sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the desert floor, every heart in Hope's Edge beat to the rhythm of a future reborn.